Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a source that suggests maybe our biggest vulnerability as a society isn't some external threat. It's actually internal rot. Specifically, the curse of deceit, both institutional and, well, individual. We're taking a deep dive into a really powerful blog post. It's called The Curse of Lies and Deception, the Downfall of Society. And it makes this fascinating argument linking ethics, the pursuit of power, and, yeah, historical collapse.
Right. And to really get the source's whole framework, we have to start with the anchor concept, which is Al-Haqq.
Al-Haqq, okay.
It's the Arabic term for the ultimate truth. Now, in the context we're exploring here, it's not just, casually meaning correctness. It represents something absolute, undeniable, foundational truth. It's like the measure against which all realities eventually are judged.
And it's important to feel the weight of that term, right? It's also one of the 99 names of Allah in Islam, so it's just something eternal, unshakable. So when this source argues that a society turns dishonesty into a means to success, well, we're talking about a fundamental collision,
right?
A clash with this absolute standard.
Precisely. The source basically suggests we're living in this kind of transactional reality where power, status, maybe wealth, they've made lying not a moral failing, but almost like a strategic asset. The real question is, what's the immediate tangible consequence when that happens, when that cultural value shifts?
Okay, let's unpack that then. If deceit becomes like routine, the source paints a pretty bleak picture of the social fabric, doesn't it?
It really does. The first casualty is trust. It becomes this precious, maybe even non-renewable resource. Suspicion isn't some fringe emotion anymore. It becomes the norm, the default setting, Think about it. If you can't trust government promises or the integrity of institutions or even, say, your neighbor's intentions, then relationships, both personal ones and transactional ones, they're just built on quicksand.
Yeah, I could see how paralyzing that would be. It's not just a moral thing, is it? It sounds deeply economic, civic, too. If every deal needs triple checks, if every public service is viewed with potential fraud in mind, the whole system must just slow right down.
Exactly right. The source details how individuals and institutions, too, get locked into this hyper-competitive spiral where they're constantly trying to, outlie each other. Why bother investing in quality or actual productivity when a really carefully crafted deception gets you immediate results, tangible results?
So the culture ends up rewarding the best deceivers.
Right, reinforcing the whole cycle.
But, okay, if the effects are so corrosive, so damaging, and so immediate, why? Why would any system, whether it's a nation or a corporation, choose this path? What does the author say is the fundamental fuel for this persistent deceit?
The motivation, according to the source, it really boils down to unchecked greed, self-interest. They're operating completely in the short term, willing to use profoundly unethical means just to keep their status, their power, their immediate wealth, even if it sacrifices the long-term health of the whole thing.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because the author suggests this behavior creates its own trap, like the constant cover-up. As the ultimate truth, Al-Haqq starts to maybe expose the falsehoods. The people caught in the lie, they don't stop. They don't hit the brakes.
No, they double down. They become desperate to protect their image, their reputation, which they now see as essential for survival.
And that desperation, that's the
regardless of the never-ending cycle, covering one lie with two more, which then needs five more, and it just keeps going. They lose sight of the main goal, which would be, the progress and well-being of the society they're supposed to be leading.
Right.
The focus shifts completely. It becomes all about image management through lies. And that creates this structure that's just incredibly brittle.
That structural weakness. That brings us to the downfall mechanism, doesn't it? The blog post mentions that timeless principle, maybe summed up by that old saying, you can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time.
But you cannot fool all the people all the time. Yeah. The truth, just by its nature, it can't be suppressed forever. And this is where the definition of Al-Haqq really matters. The source is quite adamant. The ultimate truth isn't some retaliatory, aggressive force. It doesn't seek to destroy its opposition through violence or, external attack.
So it's not like an invading army. It's more like the fundamental, inescapable laws of reality,
Yeah.
a standard.
That's a really powerful image. Truth as a standard, not a weapon. Yes. The ultimate truth works by using the opposition's own weaknesses, their increasingly fragile web of lies, their manipulations. That's what brings about the collapse. The exposure of these practices causes those in power to just hemorrhage credibility. And crucially, they lose support from their own people because now their own people see the foundation as, well, fraudulent.
So the whole collapse is basically a failure of architecture, not a successful siege from outside. It's this society's own actions, their own choices, that destroy them.
Exactly. The lies they use to get power become the very thing that takes them down.
Wow.
They become consumed by their own creation. The source literally says this internal consumption is the curse. And when that fabric of society just crumbles under the sheer weight of dishonesty, think about it. Constant lawsuits, failed promises, economic paralysis, because investors lose faith.
Yeah.
Individuals suffer profoundly, institutions collapse, and you get real, unavoidable chaos. It's the ultimate self-inflicted wound, according to this view.
Right. Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture then. We need to look at the historical evidence. The source cites examples to show this pattern isn't new, right? This mechanism has deep roots.
Oh, indeed. The source uses the classic examples, actually, the downfall of great empires, specifically mentions Rome and Babylon, and attributes their decay not mainly to, say, barbarian invaders or military deceit.
But to this.
Yeah.
This internal curse of deceit.
Exactly that. Yes.
How does the source illustrate that, though? Because it's easy to just say, Rome fell. What was the specific deceitful practice that actually undermined the structure?
Well, the author points to things like corruption in governance, the kind that just eroded the public trust you need for a functioning state. For example, during the later Roman Empire, the source highlights how tax officials, public contractors, they became notorious for really deep-seated fraud, manipulation.
Okay.
So when citizens saw maybe infrastructure projects failing because the funds got siphoned off, or they witnessed gross inequality in how laws were enforced based on who could afford the biggest bribe, they lost faith, not just in the corrupt individuals, but in the state's very purpose.
So the lie isn't just like a bad political talking point. It's a cracked pillar in the aqueduct itself. And that erosion of faith, it means when an external threat does show up, there's no internal will left. No motivation to defend the system because people know the system is already lying to them.
That's the mechanism described.
Wow.
Yeah. And the source pulls that pattern right into the modern day. Look at countries right now struggling with pervasive, normalized corruption. They suffer profound economic instability, social instability, too. The source argues it doesn't matter if you're dealing with ancient marble columns or modern digital infrastructure. The method of self-destruction, it stays constant.
I'm really struck by that consistency. It suggests that, okay, the political context changes, technologies change, but the underlying human moral choice seeking power through illusion, it just keeps triggering the same fatal reaction from Al-Haqq, from that absolute standard.
It really underscores the source's central argument, doesn't it? Ethical quicksand is always quicksand. Systems built on it are just inherently fragile.
Which brings us, logically, to the solution offered. If this curse is brought on by our own actions, our own choices, the solution must also lie there, in our collective and individual alignment. How does the source suggest we break free? How do we start building a society based on truth and justice? The simple answer is embodying Al-Haqq in our actions. But how? How do we actually do that when the system itself seems to reward deceit?
That's the critical difficulty the source really highlights. It acknowledges it. It's easy to say speak the truth, but the author points out, in a deceitful society, speaking truth often means sacrificing something. Status, maybe safety, maybe financial well-being.
Right.
The individual steps required are basically try always to speak the truth, even when it's hard or uncomfortable. Hold ourselves accountable for our actions, no deflecting, and strictly avoid manipulating others for personal gain.
That takes real moral courage, doesn't it? Not just good intentions. So how does that responsibility translate up to the systemic level? Because often institutions are the biggest drivers of the lie.
Yeah, absolutely. For institutions, the source says they must prioritize transparency and structural accountability in their actual operations. This isn't just, putting out a press release saying you value honesty.
Right. Needs more than that.
It means creating concrete systems, things like robust internal audits, clear whistleblowing protections that are actually enforced, governance structures designed to resist single points of failure due to corruption.
And the leaders, they have to be the first ones to model that behavior. They have to set an explicit example. Honesty, Integrity. If the person at the top is lying about quarterly earnings or political promises, there's zero chance the rest of the system holds itself to a higher standard.
Mm-hmm. The author strongly suggests these structural safeguards are paramount. You have to build systems that actively prevent deceit. Because just relying on the individual virtue of leaders, well, history shows that's often catastrophic.
It sounds like a monumental task, honestly. But the source insists it's necessary if we want to create a sustainable world. And it does conclude with a very powerful, almost spiritual warning about the nature of the consequence.
Yes, a very stark reiteration that pursuing power and wealth through lies, it ultimately leads only to our downfall. The source warns, and this is almost a direct quote, that the curse of Al-Haqq's oppositions will ultimately become the curse of our own society if we do not break free. It's quite a chilling reminder, isn't it, that ultimate truth is seen here as an objective standard. All systems are measured against it. And failure to align just guarantees self-destruction.
So to sum up our deep dive, we looked at this argument that ultimate truth, Al-Haqq, isn't some aggressive retaliatory force. It's more like a universal standard, one that simply waits for dishonesty to cause a system to self-destruct. And the source cites historical precedents for this, from, say, Babylon's corrupt governance right up to modern states struggling with endemic fraud.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, I think, is that the ultimate strength of the truth, in this view, is its absolute nature. It doesn't actually have to fight. It just requires alignment. The author suggests the only way to avoid the systemic destruction is proactive, courageous, moral alignment, both personally and at that deep level of systemic design.
It's a sobering thought to leave you with. Considering the complexity of our modern institutions, corporate, governmental, educational, you name it, how do you measure accountability? Not just in the public declarations, the speeches, but in the actual systems, the policies that govern daily decisions. Are you looking for the speech, or are you auditing the plumbing? That's maybe something for you to mull over or explore on your own.